to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. My guest today is Erin Moore. Now, you know I love sales. You know I love process. And you know I love to dance. You probably know that. I think you do, right? And here's the thing. Why? I don't know. Sometimes I think about what is it at the core of these things. You know what is at the core of these things? That each require a give and take, a balance. Here's another crazy thing. I'm a Libra. So does that surprise you? I'm always looking to balance things. The thing is, when I think about the sales process, it occurs to me it's a lot like your design process. Now, I know that sounds a little like, all right, that's a stretch. But after you hear Erin today talk about sales and the different modes of selling, and actually more accurately, the different modes that we need to move in and out of during the selling process, then it's going to make sense for you. Now, here's the thing. 4 decades in business, reading sales books since I'm 10 years old, I had aha moments not 10 minutes into this conversation with Erin. So good. Erin Moore is a sales leader. She was previously in the tech industry for over a decade, so she knows a thing or two about bringing a strategic mindset and technical skill sets to the table. While working in this male-dominated field, she began to develop a female-focused approach that she wasn't finding in traditional sales books. And now Erin is passionately teaching women how to sell authentically and personally in her business called A Sales Conversation. And today she's here to share advice and strategies to help us do just this, have a sales conversation. All right? So I am looking forward to introducing you to Erin. Hi, Erin. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Yes, thanks you. Thank you, LuAnn. I'm so excited to be here.
So, my audience knows me. You have the word sales in your company. And we're already practically BFFs, I'm just going to say. But what's funny and interesting, Erin, is I often will take 15, 20, 30 minutes pre-air to talk to somebody and really make sure we get a through line on the interview. And I kind of can see the whole interview in my mind and the things I want to bring out. And you and I just met today for the first time about 7 or 8 minutes ago. I did not do that with you. And I'm going to share with you why, and all of my friends listening why, is because my expectation is my expectation is, as a sales professional, I don't need all the preamble. We're going to figure it out. It's going to be fine. But in the first 5 or 6 minutes that I met you, I just went, okay, this is a smart lady. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to hit the ball back and forth. And I feel like it's going to be fine. But I'm very curious to pick apart how you help interior designers be better salespeople. And that part I don't know yet. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be fun for me as an exploration on how do you approach teaching creatives and designers and other professional sales, because I love sales and I love picking this apart. So talk to me, Erin. What is it? What is your philosophy on sales, and what is I almost heard in my head the kid glove approach to teach, because here's what I feel like happens. Most interior designers will knee-jerk reaction. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a salesperson. Now, I have done my duty over the last 7 years trying to explain to every single one of them that yes, you are. Yes, you are, sweetie. You are a salesperson. When you're trying to get your 2-year-old to like put their sneakers on, you're a salesperson. And when you're pitching a multiple 6-figure project, you're a salesperson. And that sales is about the win-win. It's not about the thing that makes you feel crappy. So, but there still is that knee-jerk reaction. And when I say kid gloves approach, it's like always trying to very much nurture a creative to understand that this isn't a bad thing, that this is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, where do you fall on all this, and where does your philosophy lay down on all of this, Erin? And what's your approach?
Yeah. God, I love that. First of all, thank you for that intro. And I completely agree. Um, I've listened to you and watched you for some time now. And I think, and I've said this to you just even before this, is you really embody what I think part of the end goal is for a lot of your listeners, and that is to expand their identity. So, what happens is with a lot of creatives and a lot of people who lead with mission and purpose, and they really are like, well, I'm a creative and I'm here to create an emotion state or a feeling for this person. They think their identity stops there. But what I believe is that sales is really an expansion of that. It is really not necessarily limiting ourselves, especially as women, because I work with women a lot, is we have this very charged emotion around business, around money, and it feels outside of what we believe we are. And so there's a lot of emotion around it. And what happens is we limit ourselves and we limit our business because we're looking at it in a lens of that's not me. Now, if I were to go, if I can, a lot of times what happens is, and it depends on where you are in the age group. So I'm in my 40s, and so growing up, there was this very distinct kind of labeling around sales. You were either in a transactional sales camp or you relational. And the terms that we heard a lot were you're either a gatherer or a hunter, or and now I would say the word transactional and relational is more popular, but still they're very, very different. And so a lot of the creatives and a lot of the people that really would probably be more in a design industry and be more in this would fall into the relational camp. If I may, I'm going to give you an example so you really understand what I'm trying to say. I often use parenting as an example. So I have 2 young kids, 6 and 8. And if I was highly emotive and I was like, I really feel my way through things. So I'm going to talk to my children in this very emotive state, and I would say, how do you feel about brushing your teeth? How do you feel about going to bed on time? My outcomes would take forever, and I would not get where I wanted to go very fast, if ever, right? Probably never, honestly. If I really was like, I'm super transactional, I'm facts, I'm figures, I'm data, I'm transactional. Let's say my daughter comes home and she's like, I had a really bad day. And I was like, you know what? It's school. I did it too. That's where we're at. Like, you can see in both cases, there's missed
Not going to
opportunity.
serve
It's
you.
not going to serve you. There's also
Right.
this space in the middle, and it's neutral. And not enough of us embody this state. And so when I'm talking to creatives, this is one of the examples I use. And for continuing with the parenting, neutral is the laundry. It's the making sure they have baths. It's the washing the dishes so they have clean plates for food. It's a part of the ecosystem that keeps us moving. And it also is part of the bigger picture. It's just part of the function of this entire relationship. And so you can see that when you're looking at sales, if you're somebody who's gone through sales training or gone to one of your workshops or gone to something to build the skills, it's so that you're expanding your actual understanding of sales. It's that I really want women and people who are in this emotive space to see that's really, in like the parenting example, that's not serving you.
Right.
It's like you need to embody all the states for the ecosystem that you're in and that you've agreed to, so that you can become an effective person in this relationship. And leaning into either camp is not right. It's yes and so I hope that answers your
Yeah.
question, but that is a way for people to start to digest that sales in a modern day in 2023, it is not black and white. It is all these
Right.
things. And we have the ability to expand and embody all of them.
You know what? In my 61 years on this planet, I have never heard anybody describe it that way, Erin.
Uh-huh.
And that is really outstanding. And it's interesting because the clarity of it is there when you, and I love that you use the parenting example, because to your point, there are times that we, and I think when I think about myself, okay, so you're using the example of parenting, and it's like brushing teeth. We're not asking like, hey, how does it feel? And would you like to do it once a day or every day? How about every third day? Like, we're not getting an opinion on that. Like, the teeth get brushed and
Hmm.
it's the thing that happens, right? And it's like, and the same thing when a kid comes from school and the day stunk. It's like, hey, kid, so the thing about it is that when I think about my own language around it, I love your clarity in describing it. It it's what I've struggled to say. It's, if I'm really showing up for the best interest of that client on the other side of the table from me, I'm bringing my whole self. And sometimes that self is, hey, sweetie, this is how the transaction goes. This is how a project is going to run. I'm in charge of it. You step in line. And sometimes it's, hey, sweetie, you know what? It's hard to make, sense between what you and your spouse both want in the bedroom, but we'll figure it out and we'll work it out.
Hmm.
And like, there's a time and a place for all of it. I love that description because it is coming as your whole person, not just the animal that is out for the sale.
Hmm.
See, that's the negative stereotype. The person that is literally just trying to close the sale is not the person who's going to close the sale. Like, I'm sorry, they're the ones who get cancellations.
Yes,
You know what I
I
mean?
do.
And so that's really very special, Erin. That's
Yeah.
actually very special.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, can I just one
Yeah,
other thing? I
of
just like
course.
it's because I'm like it's happening to me right now. Like I'm like getting it right. This is why I didn't want to do it off air
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah.
Like, no, let me figure it out while you're telling me. When you said, and I want to kind of ask and clarify. So when you originally started, you were saying something about like, I'm a creative person, like identifying with designers. I'm passionate. I want you to have this outcome. Designers often self-proclaim themselves to be people pleasers. I don't like the negative connotation on it. I think it's admirable to want the people in your sphere to feel happy and cared for. This is not a bad thing, right? But the idea is when you're saying expand, are you telling us don't lose that core? Don't lose that person that's compassionate and passionate and wants to help and to please, but just expand and open your mind that there's skill sets that you can learn. And one of them is sales. So you can still be you, but you actually have skills. It's kind of like, you're a person on the planet and maybe you take yoga classes. And guess what? Now you're still the same Sally Smith, but Sally Smith knows how to do yoga.
Hmm.
And so you could be Sally Smith, who's a passionate creative designer who also has sales skills. We don't abandon ourselves in order to add that skill set. Is that
That's a
what you're
hun
saying when you
that
say
that's
expand?
100% correct, and I think what happens is because there's these labels out there, we were forced to
Yeah.
choose one. And
Yeah.
what's
I'm
so
either a nice guy or I'm a swarmy
yeah,
salesperson.
and I really 100% believe women have, so women always outsell in the statistics. Women typically outsell men because we're more patient, we're more collaborative, and we're better listeners.
That's
But
right.
we do not put ourselves in enough situations that we are actually using these skills because we've chosen to step out of the race because we don't feel like we can be our whole selves. And I want to let every woman know your whole self is also clear, direct, firm, sets boundaries, says no. And
That's
you
right.
can do both. And one of the things that LuAnn, I said this to you before, and why people should be signing up for your workshop, because I'm pretty sure you learn this intuitively and through failure and through practice and experience, like myself, is the difference between somebody who's skilled and somebody who isn't skilled in relationship to sales is you know how to pivot in and out of those three things of transaction,
Yes.
of neutral, and emotive. And one of the things people can count on you for is for you to be able to say, here's where you should be really deeply leaning into your empathy. Here's where you really need to see, like, at the end of the day, business is neutral. If you are signing up for a workshop to work with LuAnn, you are saying, I have a business to run. And that should be a statement that is about strategy, that is about skill, that is about revenue, that is about profit, and that is sits in the middle. It shouldn't be thrown into emotive or thrown into transactional. But what they're coming to you for, and what I've listened and seen and respect and wanted to be on your show for, is because there aren't enough women who show us how to pivot, how to navigate, and how to use these three different buckets. And that's what we want to do here. We want to teach women. Again, I'm sorry, this is more my lane for all the men out there who are purpose driven too. This applies. But women are always we're taught to be quiet. We're taught to go second.
Yeah.
We're taught to be servers. We are given that role so often, and it's why I really believe in this expansion. But coming back to what you said, 100%, it is a skill that you need to first acknowledge and accept that there are all these there's a bigger part of the story, and I can navigate through all three, and give yourself permission to say, I have a place in my business and this is how I'm going to lead. What's really interesting, one of the things that happens the most with somebody who hasn't practiced these skills is the minute they get into a sales conversation, they give away their power.
Right.
And
Right.
so what's interesting is some of this is just like, it is skill, but it's also, what is our relationship to power? What is our relationship to business? What is our relationship to money? Because how many times have we sat down with somebody and they just take charge of the conversation? Okay, well, here's what I want to do. Here's what I want to pay. Here's what da, 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 da. And if your default, because you are a people pleaser, is to let them go first and to navigate the conversation from their position of interest. When it's your company, you can see I'm passionate about
Right.
it. When it's your business, when it's your profits, I get so angry because it's like, they don't get to come in and step all over you. You're here to do
Right.
work. And so it is about our relationship to power, and it is about leveling up our skills and understanding we can learn this. We can absolutely improve this and say, you know what? I'm assuming that this is something you're extremely passionate about. I can assume on what you just said, budget and pricing is a number one. Is that correct? Can we talk through this a little bit? They
Right.
can come at you all day. You pause, you listen, you're generous with what they have to say, and then you take the control back. So these
Right.
are things we can learn, but if we don't choose to learn them, we will always be in a place of reaction to
Mm-hmm.
whoever's decided that they're going to be in control.
Mm. I it's so you're so on the mark with all of this. It's really resonating with me. And you mentioned there is an it makes sense to go through th- a little bit of discussion about each, what the description is of transactional, neutral, and relational. Is that a logical place to go with this,
Yeah,
Erin?
absolutely. That's for context, absolutely. So one of the things I often say, so if you want to envision, you have a straight line and you have two endpoints. If you left for logic, so I always say left for logic, it's our logic brain, it's data, it's features and benefits. It's that when my kid came home from school, I went straight to the information. I didn't leave any space for like story and empathy and emotion. And I come from tech sales. And you see it a lot in tech sales because it's driven by short term cycles and profit, and so
Right.
they really, it's like high volume, high volume. They're not doing a long term cycle. I think that's wrong, but that's how they typically drive. So you can see that this is really transactional, but it can serve
Mm-hmm.
you in ways, and it's still a part of it. If you go all the way to
Mm-hmm.
the other side, at the other endpoint, a motive and a relationship seller is somebody who really isn't driven actually by price, isn't driven by the money. And that's why sales feels so yucky to them. It's out of alignment. It's because if you're relational, you want to have impact. You want somebody to walk into a room and feel something, right? And it's like,
Right.
this is what I want to bring to the world. This is what I want to bring to my anybody who I work with. And it's deeply tied to who we are and what we want to offer. And so doing anything for money is out of alignment. And this is
Mm.
in the emotive camp. And this is why it works in places, but it's not effective in the long run to run your sales process. And so you have these two sort of extremes, and then in the middle you have just like this neutral, almost strategic, non-reactive space. And that is
Mhm.
like we said, it's the doing of the laundry, or the function
Mhm.
of a part of the business. Does that help
Do
clarify?
you Yes, yes, it
Okay.
does. And do you find, Erin, that when you train and work with creatives, whether it's designers or whatever, do you find that there is look, we understand the person who recognizes, I have a passion. I want the people and the places around me to be beautiful and happy and all the things. And I struggle with sales. There's a person who calls himself out and says, yep, problem. Okay. But I think the trickier thing is, and I wonder if you find it to be true, that there are people, entrepreneurs, designers, business owners who have enough savvy to understand that there has to be money transacted, that things have to happen in transactions. And there's this part of their brain that accepts it. But the overriding motive for them is emotion. And they don't see even where they're unwilling to move to the neutral or the transaction when necessary. And they're saying to themselves, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's kind of like, I always use the examples of the gyms, right? Like I used to be an instructor. I like jazzercise, Jane Fonda era. This was me with leg warmers and all the things, and taught 6 classes a day and jumped around like a lunatic, right? I'm sure nobody can picture it. Yeah, right. Okay. So like, and the thing is, I always remember, and I used to work out people, personal train them, and I always remember there were the people who like, help me, help me, I don't know how to do it. Great, let's just help, accept all help. And then there were the people who would say, I'm doing all the right things, but they really weren't.
Mhm.
Like it was like they're showing up and they're, not quite taking the class and not, like you're not doing the program and you're walking around and they're like, no, no, I'm doing all the things. It's just not working. I think what I'm trying to say is, do you find when you've got somebody who truly wants to understand it, but they are truly identifying as the creative and the empath and the passionate person, and they actually have a difficulty seeing that they struggle to move to neutral and transactional?
Mhm.
Isn't that a thing, right?
I mean, I think it's true for all of us at certain stages. And I
Okay.
think two things. One, it's this is not mine. A friend of mine told me, and he heard it from somebody else, but I love it. When we're inside the bottle, we can't see the label.
Ah, yes.
When we
Love
are
it.
inside ourselves, we can't see our blind spots. And it is so, it's what you do and it's what I do. It's why we need to be in community with others. It's why we need to, and it's why we hire coaches. It's why we go to workshop. It's why we listen to podcasts. It's so that we can have others reflect back through, like, look at this conversation right here, right? We're talking and you just said you learned something that you haven't ever heard. And it's
Right.
because we're in conversation and we're community and we're listening and we're present, right? And so first thing I would say is get out in community and talk to people
I love that.
about just because we can't see ourselves and we can't
I
hold,
love
and
that.
so that is like step one. And then the other thing I will say that is not talked about enough, and again, I think you're like my spirit animal, you totally get this. You need to build stamina. You are
Mm.
not going to be, you're not going to be somebody who's super emotional or transactional and be like, tomorrow I listen to this podcast, I'm going to embody everything, I'm going to be this, what I've
Boom.
done.
Got
Done. And it
it.
is something that I really also get fired up about, especially around this time of year. It's like the New Year's resolutions and setting new goals and dreams. The day that we set the vision, the dream, the goal, is not the day we achieve it.
Right.
It's necessary for direction and necessary to say, in 6 months, my vision and my goal and my dream is to embody this mindset, this way of doing things. And what are the small actions and the stamina and what is the building blocks that I need to slowly, consistently move myself towards that? And by the
Yeah. Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
sleep. Do you know what I mean? Like, people think it's like all these things. Are you rested? Are you hydrated? You talked about this in one of your podcasts about you asking a bunch of people had they gone to all their appointments with their clients, and nobody raised their hand that they'd missed it. And then you said, but did you miss your appointments for yourself around taking care of
Right.
yourself? And
Yeah.
it's that, right? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
slowing down. It's making sure you have sleep. It's like, I want to be today, I want to take one step. I want to have a different sales conversation. I want to go into the sales conversation, or I want to do an outreach, or I want to create a community, or I want to take an action. So it has to be something you execute on. You're going to take an action and you just know you're building the muscle, right? You're
Mm.
not in this social media, we always see the success story. We always see the, oh, look, I made millions in 2 hours. And we see that, right? And then it makes us feel like, oh my gosh, like we get all, know that it takes time. Know that if you're doing
Right.
anything new, it's new. So it's going to take time. And
Right.
so, yes, and yes, I'm emotive and I can expand. Yes, I'm transactional and I want to bring in a new part of my identity. Yes.
Mm.
And then the neutral statement is, yes, I'm deserving. Yes, this is a business. Yes, I'm going to learn and build on my skills. Like, there's a million ways we can move ourselves forward. And I would actually say, but start with talking with somebody. Get out of your own
Right.
head. Get different viewpoints. So that would be, I think that that's a really honest place for a lot of people.
Mm.
And the worst thing you can do is compare, and the worst thing you can do is think and figure out literally how to start building your stamina.
I love it. And the thing about it is people can be like when you work with different people that want help in their sales training, somebody could be predominantly transactional and leaving out the neutral and the emotional. It's just typically creatives are more to the other side, but you might be a creative who's transactional
Mm-hmm.
too. You might be having difficulty communicating and relating with your consumers and closing the projects because maybe you're just showing up and in that mode. So it's not one size fits all. It's helping and trying to identify where our strengths are, and then to your point, expanding to include the other skill sets. And I love that clarity. It's like we all come to this as who we are, but we can expand ourselves, to use your words,
Mm-hmm.
to include the other areas so that we can, because the sales process and the successful salesperson is going to, as you said, swim in and out of all three.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny because one of my chairman of the boards, she lives overseas,
Mm-hmm.
and 90% of our coaching is navigating what we call like hard conversations. And they're really consistently sales conversations because it's a conversation with her superior. It's a conversation with the CEO of the company that she works for, or it's a conversation with a peer. And it's always like, we always get clarity first on what is it that you want from this. I'm always like, okay, what do you want? What's the end game? And so a recent conversation, and I will not call you out by name, don't worry, sweetie, but a recent conversation was, I want to go to 3 days a week in my full-time job, period. End of discussion. And I'm like, okay. So the thing is, I'd spent a lot of time getting very clear on, is this actually non-negotiable? In meaning, if they don't agree, are you quitting? Because I need to know that to help you navigate this conversation. Because if you're quitting, if you don't get it, well, then that's, then like, to use your language, I'm like coaching her, like a lot of this conversation is going to be very neutral.
It's
Mhm.
like, here's the facts. This is what's happening. I'm willing to be, pliant in this way or that way. But other than that, this is what's happening. And I'm like, my conversation with her is a lot of watch the tone. The tone is
Mhm.
neutral. The tone is I'm just expressing the the thing that I'm asking for, and it's so funny because when I think about your parenting example, one of the things I said was the way you just said it to me was it was like you were asking me. It's kind of like
Mhm.
if, do I really want you to brush your teeth? Because you just said it like I have a choice. And it's so funny because I was like, move away from that. I said, the words do not matter if the tone is expressing question, if
Mhm.
the tone is expressing option.
Mhm.
Right. And so, but it's so funny because when I think about it, and I think she'll hear it too when she listens to this conversation, when she thinks about the last year, and we must have had, oh my God, I've had the best conversations with her, hours and hours and hours of dissecting when I'm saying to her, here you're moving for direct, here you're moving for agreement, here you're looking for, like I'm going to use the word community, not that, but collaboration. It's like boom, in, out, up, down, go for the kill, now step back.
100%, and I think that
It's
that
crazy.
is the difference. So it's so
Yeah.
easy to see when you're thinking about like sports analogies and you're like that, then you're
Yeah.
like they have raw talent. So, okay, great. What are we going to do with the raw talent?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I
Like
love it.
we need people that have done it before who know how to do it to come in and say, here's how we're going to maneuver. And I think that I would never suggest, and if you ever hear somebody in sales say there's only one way, know that
Ugh,
that's wrong. There's a
right.
million ways to be effective and to have impact and to create revenue. And how you want to do it is probably a way you've already done it. So it's not like you even needed to create anything new, but you still need to skill build. You still
Yes.
need to take a raw talent and get coached because your talent, and I'm sorry, the only sport I really am good at knowing is football, but it's like, how is your skill working with the offense, with the defense, with like, you're going to be in different situations, right? So you need to have your knowledge of your basic skills. And then you need to know how to be coached on how to be engaged with all these other environments, all these other situations. And the thing that I really, really hold to in the work that I do, you've got to practice. You
Yeah.
can't read about it. You can't just like to your point with the client that you have, she's in it. She's practicing and
Yeah.
she's practicing with
Yep.
you because what
Yep.
happens especially in sales is our nervous system gets rattled. And we go from I know who I am, I know everything, I'm super calm, I'm super zen to a confrontational client and we're like okay, yeah, whatever you want. Like we completely
Yeah. Yeah.
back
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
because we're nervous and we're rattled. And you need to practice as much as you can being in that sort of like dysregulated state so that when you're in it, you can pause and you can say, you can respond instead of react. And that's
Yes.
the difference.
It's funny because we our last year and a half together, literally there have been times where we've spent 2 weeks role playing,
100%.
like literally, okay, this is what I think, I'm okay, listen to this, and then I'll be like, okay, and then I like critique it and I come back and I'm like, love that part, lean in, come out, guess now, and it's interesting because um I love that it's well, you teach it. You do have your 2-day course where you teach it. So
Mhm.
I'm going to go to that next. And I want to
Yeah.
understand some core principles, some core teachings that you do that somebody that's listening today can take away as an actionable, like, okay, I can do that. Um, but I love that you call out, you need to work with other people. You have to have it reflected on you because you can practice in the mirror all day, but if you don't have that person that's just one step ahead of you, that one step that can critique it with a positive like, it's like I'm never saying to her, I don't know, it sounds good. Like, I'm always like, I literally have very strong opinions
Yeah.
on like every sentence. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and it's just interesting, like you said, to have it reflected back at you. And even if it's a peer, if it's not somebody that has more experience, even a peer can hear what you're saying and be like with the kid example, like if your sister was standing next to you and your 6-year-old came home and they were like, Mom, I had such a hard day, and you said to your 6-year-old, yeah, we were all kids once, get over it, your sister would look at you and go, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, so even your peer can hear, they might not have as much skill set in helping you course correct, but most people can hear when something isn't right, right?
100%. I heard this on a different podcast the other day, and they said consistency reveals your results. But here's
Love that.
here's the thing. Initially, I did love it. I was like, yeah, preach. I was like all over it. And then I thought about it, and two things came to mind. One, so my
I
background.
know what you're going to say. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So one of the things is my background that doesn't come up a lot. So I actually started out in makeup. I was a makeup artist for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
I did a traveling artist. I was a freelance artist. And so often what served me a lot now is I have all these Zoom calls and I can do my makeup in 5 seconds. Like I'm like, boom, right? And I'm like, that is something that I got skilled in and I'm consistent in. So I'm always like, one of the best things I ever did for myself was learn how to do makeup in 5 minutes for all the calls that I have to jump on unexpectedly, right? So in that situation, consistency shows my results. That's true. Guess what I'm awful at? Cooking. Guess what I've been doing my entire life and 4 children and 4 other people for a very long time, 3 times a day. And consistency has shown 0 results.
It's not helping.
It's negative. So,
Yeah.
I was like, that's wrong. It's skilled
you know what it struck me as?
results. It's you've got to don't if somebody's listening and they haven't had any sales training and they're like, I show up every day and I'm not getting results.
Yeah, that's like doing the same thing
It's
every
like
that's
it's
like
my
insanity,
cooking.
right?
Yeah, it's my cooking. It's getting worse, not better, right? It's like I need to bring in somebody to show me how to. Why we'll probably never, but need to. It's like we need the training and the skills so that when we do the consistency, the results show up.
Right.
And that was my thought.
And it reminded me of, as soon as the thought that went through my mind was, it's the same analogy with sports. You can practice every day, but if you do a crappy practice every day, that consistency. So we used to always say perfect practice makes great play, right? So in practice, it's practice. We can create the scenarios where you get fed the ball at exactly the right time with nobody yelling at you. Like let's put you in a batting cage where there isn't an umpire, there isn't a live pitcher, there isn't the other team, there isn't your parents watching, and let's create the perfect practice so that the consistency of that perfect practice helps you perform in the game under real-time pressure,
100%.
right? And so that's the difference. So take us in, right?
So good.
So take us into some of the things that a designer listening can say, thank you. Okay, great. You talked it to death. I understand. I'm more emotive than I am transactional. Whatever. Now what do I do with it?
Yeah. So I have a 2-day, it's called a 2-day intensive. And day 1 is everything about you. So if LuAnn went into this 2-day intensive, the first day is everything is about you. One of the things I think gets missed is, how do you relate to the problem? So how is it that you are actually connected to what it is you're offering? I think that's a really important thing, especially if you're emotive or relational. How does what you're doing, and this is more of like a deep level exercise, more of emotional intelligence, self-awareness. What we are often solving for other people is something we're trying to solve for ourselves. And it is really interesting when you start to lean into that. And the reason why that's so important. So, as an example for myself, I'm a middle child. And guess who never got listened to and taken seriously?
Aww,
I'm so wounded. My sisters can't get enough of this story. But in a very real sense, I always felt like I was the entertainer, not the one who got listened to, because my older sister straight A's, blue ribbons, always got like the final say. It's no surprise I'm teaching value, confidence, verbal expression in sales as my life's work, right? And it took me a long time to come to that, but that's what I'm
Specifically for
saying.
middle children.
And if you're a middle child, I relate to you in ways that others can't.
See, and us
So
firstborns are like, come on,
exactly.
get over
Yes,
yourself.
firstborns were listened to and why I'm here. But you can see though that you need to know why this is important to you. And you need to know why
Yeah.
it goes past the money and past this.
Mm.
And so these are some of the things we want to talk about. And we do talk about it in a group. The other thing that I love about what we do, and I think also is really helpful and something to consider, is we also do a lot of talking about what it is you are uniquely good at. I call this exercise the roots of the tree. And what I mean by that is that we need to know everybody needs to know very specifically what you're actually really good at. And you need to label it and you need to own it. And the reason is because it's directly related to pricing and the money that we put in our offers. If you think about a tree and the roots of the tree, in every single season, that tree doesn't move, but the leaves fall off, the leaves grow back, it goes through seasons, and it can be very impacted. It can be impacted by partners. It can be by bosses, by voices. Our confidence level can easily be, we give somebody too much power and our leads fall off. But really, if we can really identify our own roots in every season, we will start to understand our value. And so it's these kinds of exercises that I basically call the readiness. It's all related to sales mindset. It's all related to confidence. It's really reframing what sales is. It's really understanding the tools that you have in your tool belt to walk into the sales conversation. And you've got to know these things. You've got to have clarity on who you are, clarity on what you offer, clarity on why it's something you can offer alone. And then you need to know how that impacts how you're speaking about it too, which is a whole nother thing, because our knowledge is one thing, but speech is a direct reflection of our thinking. And if you haven't practiced what you're thinking about your offer, about how it's positioned, about, why this is important, why is it a must have, why do they need to pay this money, all these things, if you haven't practiced that out of clarity of thought around all your tools, you're going to show up and feel like you don't know what you're saying. You don't know who to talk to. You don't know what you're going to say. You feel overwhelmed. And so we just kind of really, in a structured way, give you a map to follow. Make sure you can check these boxes. Make sure you understand what you uniquely are positioned for. That's day one. Day two is all about the sales conversation. It completely flips and you are no longer really a part of the conversation. You have your tools, you're walking into it. This is a lot of the hot seat training. This is a lot of the let's really practice verbally through a group of other like peer group, what it is we know and how to show up and how to kind of dysregulate our nervous system so that we get the practice of saying in very uncomfortable situations, how are you responding if somebody goes straight to price? Do you know what to say? How would you respond to that? And if you don't, let's practice it. So it goes completely in, and we do have conversation design. The one thing that I think is really, really important that I would pull out of this, and you talked about it with your client about going into a negotiation with your boss. What is in it for them? What is the business mindset? And I think one of the things that we forget is if we're in sales, it's so natural to always think of ourselves. And a sales conversation is how are your clients making money? How are you impacting them to help them make money? What does this give to them that helps them in what they're doing? People will do so many things if they understand that you care and understand why it's important to them. And so the business mindset is something that we talk a lot about, and then context, and it's sequencing of that information. And if you talk to a buyer and they're like super transactional, you don't want to just jump to emotive, right? You want to mirror them. You gotta mirror them. You gotta respond to them. You've got to navigate that and figure out, again, what you do really well and what people need to understand is how to pivot. So a lot of the sales
Right.
conversation is one, understanding the conversation design, understanding sequencing, but then also how do I go, into
In and
in
out.
and out of these different buckets in literally in the sales conversation.
It's interesting because, first of all, I don't want to go past this because I wrote this down. How to deregulate your nervous system. I love that because that's what the role play does. Like this designer, over the last year and a half, literally every time she's finally gotten to one of these tough conversations, she's like, her and I have gone back so many times and she's ready. Like 16 different balls can come at her and she's like, well, LuAnn said you might say that and I already played for that. Like, and I love that visual of deregulating your nervous system. It's like getting it to a point where it is a process. I'm rolling through this conversation and I'm not taking shrapnel. Like I'm not,
Mhm.
I took a hit and I'm down. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, that went on that shoulder. All right, let's try again. Let's
Totally.
round out and go over here. Right.
Totally.
So I love that.
You know what? I totally agree with you. And the thing that I think really gets missed in the deregulation state is that we are focused
Mm,
on the words because we are so nervous and we're like, well, what are they going to say? And what is it they're saying? And we're digesting the words. And let me give you an example of what it means to practice deregulation, something that I think everybody will understand. So let's just say you're in a sales conversation and you come into it and you've done your Zen and you're ready and you know all your tools and you've done the sales practice and the buyer sits down and he goes, well, I really just want to hear about your pricing. That's why I'm here. And so you're focused on the words and you're like, I need to respond. What should I say? When you start to practice and you start to get into these sales conversations and you know what you stand for, why you're there and all this, what I want people to start to understand is you will start to actually look at the person you're about to go into a relationship with. Let me give you an example. If you're on a date and you sit down with somebody and some guy sits down and you sit down and you're excited and he's excited and the first thing he says is, so can you have children? How do you feel about being a mom?
okay.
How off-putting and shocking and
Yeah.
ugh do we feel, right, as a woman?
Right. Right.
And it's the thing of it is the information in the question itself is not wrong. In a
Right.
relationship, that's a very important question. But
Right.
what I want people to start to understand when you get to practice, what you start to see is if you just respond and say, "Oh, I want children and I would love to have kids." One, you just put yourself in a relationship with somebody who led a conversation and are they in partnership with you? Are they listening to your value? What is it that you're actually stepping into? And these are the kinds of things when you're just regulated, you're just focused on the words and you're not actually
Mm,
taking in a broader picture. And so in a sales conversation, if somebody comes at you with that and they say, well, I just here for pricing, then you can pause and you can say, well, I mean, I understand that that's an important part of this conversation, but so can I assume that your number one metric for using me as a designer is completely price? Because
right.
that's
Right.
not because I actually have there's a reason why my pricing is where it is. And I think that the value
Right.
of it is worth having a conversation about. Does that interest you? Is
Right.
that fair? And so
Right.
you're giving them a chance. So then if he says, you know what? I just had this really bad experience. I went through this whole process and they charged me way out of my league. Now
Mm.
you're pulling in your
Oh,
empathy
I get
and
it.
you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. I
It's okay,
understand.
buddy. I got
Yeah.
you.
If they come back and they're like, yeah, so pricing's it.
Great. See you.
You
Bye.
have a choice at that point to respond or disrespond, but when you start to go through practice, you learn that you are going to be a little dysregulated. You start to see what kind of business you're actually building. It's not a sales conversation in a one to one to one to one to one. You're starting to create a target market, a client base that you're excited about. You serve different. You see people different. You start to hear things different. You start to read nonverbal different. So a sales conversation and practicing these skills like the client you had and working and working and working and like we said earlier in building stamina and setting big visions, it's so that we start to become business owners. And so we start to become effective in who we're serving. It's so that whatever we are doing in our business is actually really having the highest level impact on the people we're serving. And then we can price it at the value we offer. And it's like,
I love it.
it starts in these small little ways. It's like, what is practice going to do for me? This is what practice is going to do for you. It's so that you start, the people who, to going back to our sports metaphors, who have the raw talent, who start at skills, they're not ready to play in massive leagues and do anything. But by the time they're skilled, what are they actually paying attention to? Are they worried about how they're holding the ball, or are they looking at the field? Right. And
Right.
so
Right.
I think one of the things that people get wrong is like, I'm going to go learn a skill, and I'm talking about skill building, and I'm talking about looking at it a certain way, and I'm talking about mindset work, and we're leaning into these topics. But the entire objective of this, especially for the creative, especially for the purpose driven, is to build a business of impact. And we do
Mm,
that by these small steps so that we're talking to the people that we have the most effective and impact on. Is that all?
wow.
It like all trickles back. And so when we think, oh, well, I'll just say yes to this one client who clearly doesn't value partnership, who disrespected me in the first 20 seconds of me sitting down with, and I'm just going to hand over my power. And then 2 years in, go, well, I'm not feeling why this isn't working.
Right. Expecting that it's going to change when it was set, the ground rules and the dynamic was set from day one, and you didn't reframe it or walk away from it.
Yeah, and if you said yes to that boyfriend or that partner who treated you like that on the first date, and you're in a relationship
Yeah.
2 years
Where's that
later,
going?
what kind of
Yeah. What
relationship
do you
you have?
think that's like?
Yeah, it's exactly the
Yeah.
same. And people get it when we say this guy sits down and offends you this way. You're like, I would never. I would dump his ass so quick. Really?
Right.
But then you're saying yes to the guy who's like, or the human or the person who's saying, I only care about money, pay, that's it.
Yeah. Get to the bottom line.
It's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
connected, and it's to design a well-designed business,
Right.
right?
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I love it. It's interesting because I'm part of me wants to wrap up because I think you just tied it in a great bow. And I just want to just add this this pivot, the way you labeled it a pivot. This is probably, I would say, 60% of the conversation at our Monday sales meetings for
Mm,
WindowWorks. We have 4 salespeople at WindowWorks, and my role there is this educator and this mentor, as far as tell me what happened, let's role play it out. What happened? What did they say? And it's interesting because I've never had the language to
mm,
describe, in and out of transactional, neutral, and emotion, but I've struggled to say, here's where we go. Like, my language is crazy pants. Like, here's where we go for the kill. This is where we stand. We just stand and we look at them like, whatever, your emergency isn't mine. And here's where we like hold their hand a little and we pat them on the back and we're like, we got you. So I've traversed through these different things without the clarity of these descriptions. You know what I'm saying? And it's going to help me. I have to tell you,
mhm.
it's going to help
Me
me a
too.
lot going forward with working with our people. We just had a situation in the sales meeting last week where one of the sales people was, because we review every sale, what happened, and here it comes, oh, they were really terrific, we really bonded, we felt like we had a meeting of the minds, and I'm giving them a quote and blah blah blah. And then there comes the, I couldn't get through, like, no matter what I did. And sometimes it's like, it's so crazy how some people, like, I like say, like, to sometimes I've said to myself over the years, you know, and I have said it out loud once or twice over the years, but like, I didn't knock on your door. I'm not the Fuller Brush lady. Like you invited me here. Like, show up, pay attention, let's have it. Like I have been in that situation where the person cannot be bothered. And you're just like, oh, just measure that and tell me what it is. And I'm like, it's going to take a little more conversation than that.
Mhm,
I'm sorry, sweetie. This
mhm.
is like $1 billion for window treatments. I'm not.
Yeah.
And so, and the thing is, I'm consistently in those types of situations telling my salespeople, to your point, you have to reframe that. You can't just accept that behavior.
Mhm.
Like you cannot. And so we had a situation where he was saying that our salesperson was meeting with an architect for their own personal home for window treatments. And the salesperson is trying to ascertain investment range.
Mhm.
What are we talking about here? Are we doing motorized, bells and whistles? Or are we just doing wood blinds or whatever? And the architect kept saying, it's fine. I'm not worried about the budget. It's fine. I'm not. And the thing was, the salesperson says, finally, after like 15 minutes, it comes out that he's an architect. And so then the salesperson said to us, okay, at that point, I was like, okay, fine. The guy's an architect. He knows price point. He specifies window treatments on his projects probably. Let me just relax and lean in. Because I teach them, no. We don't relax and lean in, and we don't start bringing all the samples out until we have agreement on budget. We are not playing house. This is not Debbie Decorator. Let's just have fun all afternoon. And then I tell you it's $30,000 and you say I wanted to spend five. And so, but what happened was he figured because he was an architect, it was safe to go. Get to the end, the architect is like, that's crazy. That's like, it's like 3 times what I thought it was going to be. And so 2 things I educated my salesperson on is, a lot of architects just specify. They don't actually gather pricing.
Mhm.
Let's be serious. Doesn't mean they know what things cost. And I said to him, in the beginning, when you were trying once or twice to qualify and ascertain investment budget, and when he kept consistently saying, it doesn't matter. It's like, I don't worry about that yet. I said, what I would have said was, oh, okay. So if this is 30K, we don't care then. And I'm saying, if I think the job is 10 or 15K, I'm going to say, so if this ends up being 30K, then we're good. Because I'm going to tell you what, he is going to stop right there and go, wait a minute. These 4 windows could be $30,000. Because guess what? I can make 4 windows be $30,000
Mhm.
easily. Do they have to be? No. But now we have their attention. Now it's like, oh, right. I'm back leading this conversation. I am in charge of this, and I am going to run this interview.
Mhm.
And you, if you want my attention and expertise, are going to come here as a partner in this. You don't get to just be on the sidelines and keep yesing me, right? Like, it's just crazy. But it's so hard to teach
It
that
is. And
without the shadowing, without the being there. And
mhm.
so in your course, you actually are achieving
Mhm.
teaching this.
Mhm.
That is gold,
And
Erin.
I
That is
and I
gold.
think that it's more than that, in that, like, it's exactly what you're saying. It's why I focus on verbal language, because to exactly what you said, we know what we want to say often. We don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
just
Well,
don't
I
have
I
the
I
language.
educate them a lot of
Yeah.
times. Just say it.
Yeah.
Like, just like, there's no word police or consultation police that are coming to say, you said that to your client?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Mhm.
Look, you say it with kindness, you say it with respect, but like, somebody's being cavalier about budget. Okay, let's be cavalier. So 30K for this works. Like there's nothing that focuses somebody faster
Yes.
than you throwing out a crazy pants number
Yes.
and them saying, wait, what?
Yes. And I would actually add to that and say, so first of all, LuAnn, you could probably sell ice to Eskimos. So it's a little unfair for some of these people. They're like, I can't be you. Right.
I know, I get it. And
So
that is the tough
that is the
part,
tough
right?
part.
It's like
They're not going to be
and by
you.
the way, let me clarify. I don't mean the tough part is that they can't be me. That's not the statement. The tough part is to help and educate and teach somebody to find their way with their voice.
Exactly.
That is the tough part
Exactly.
for me as their sales
Exactly.
manager. I'm like, okay, what would you say? How would
Exactly.
you do this? Like,
Exactly.
can we do it in your world, in your
Mhm.
language?
Mhm.
That is what I'm consistently going through.
Yeah.
So I say, well, this is what I would do, but I'm a little, I'm a little in your face. So how do we make it so that you could say that
100%.
and feel like you,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. That's
So
exactly
yeah,
it. And if you're listening to this and you're like, well, what do you say? I think something that I use a lot is I use the word assume. So I will say,
mm,
so I'm going to assume by you saying pricing isn't an issue, that I can give you any number and you're going to sign. or I'm going to
Yeah.
assume. So, what you're doing when you say I'm assuming, you're saying you think you have enough information by what the other person said. And here's the thing, this is what I love. And this is something that I learned out of Chris Voss. So, I'm not trying to steal his work or anything like that.
Oh, I love
So,
Chris Voss.
this is a really good tool that I've heard him use, is that people love to tell you you're wrong. They
Yeah.
don't necessarily love to tell you you're right. Also applies to
Mm.
children. But yes, so if you say, I'm going to assume then what you're saying, then price isn't an issue. I'm thinking that what I'm thinking about right now is 30K. Can I assume that that's comfortable for you? And he will
Right.
stop and love to correct you. So
Right. Right.
it's really a great way to navigate something when you don't want to be like, you're newer, or you really do have a lot of fear, or you really do feel really dysregulated, but you know you need to get price. This is a very soft way of saying,
Right.
you're still doing exactly what you're doing it. It's trying to use language in a way that you can use. And so I completely agree with everything you're saying. And it
Yeah, no,
takes
it's
practice.
right, because not everybody can pull off that. Okay, so 30K, we're good. Like, no, not everybody can pull that off. That's exactly to your point, and I agree with that. And to say, so then I should make an assumption then, or I can assume that an investment, like, there's a
A
thousand
thousand
ways to
ways.
get there. And this is literally, like, again, to bring up my same coaching client, I'm always like, okay, so here's the inside voice on how I would do it. Now let's figure out how you're going to do it.
Yes.
But this is where we're trying to get, but let's figure out what feels right and what feels like you. And I it's just crazy. I mean, look, I can make this podcast 5 hours long. I had another story, but I'm gonna let it go.
And it's totally that you, though, have built consistency and stamina, and you've done this for such a long time that you are not in a space of learning, you're in a space of teaching. And that's what people need to understand, that you're at a point now where you can do those navigations, and that's why you're such a value to your community.
Well, and I love, because I've learned some ways to help in that teaching, because that is the one thing. I mean, I learned that with my children. I really did. I learned that with my kids. It's like each kid is so
Mm,
different in
mm,
personality, and you want, quote unquote, the same things for each of them, right? You want
mhm,
happiness, joy, fulfillment,
mm.
success, love, all the things. But what you learn is what constitute that for each person looks
Be
completely
different.
different.
Mhm.
So the kid that's going to go off to, the big college, and the other one that's not, it's like we don't put them all in the same lane and say, I did good by my kids, right? And so that's what's constantly happening with me with the 4 personalities in the
Mhm.
sales training. I'm like, okay, this one is a thinker. Like, let me, like, how would this, how can I help
Totally.
this one? So it's interesting, and I love that you have come up with methodology. I'm doing it all from gut and from experience. God help me. You know what I'm saying? But you're doing it from methodology, and that's impressive, I have to say.
Thank you. But you know what's so crazy is your instincts were to say, like, I am a very conceptual thinker, and I really love like the process of understanding something. And you are like, I'm going to learn this. Like, it's the
Yeah.
same thing, right? It is the same thing. And that's why it's so beautiful, because you were saying, this is what I do. And I'm like, well, here's how I speak about it. I love it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No.
And it shows you can get to the same place different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's been one of the greatest joys of all of these
Mm,
more than 1,000 interviews between the 2 podcasts now, is finding a thing that I kind of knew, or I did know, or I was doing, and somebody has a label for it, or a
mhm.
process for it, or a structure around it. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I love that. That makes total sense now.
I've been doing it forever. So good.
That's it. But it's like different, because now what happens is it makes it, I'm going to tell you what you just did for me today is, like I said, I do it from gut and from experience. And both are very valuable, by the way.
Mhm.
I own both of those. They're nothing to be shaken a stick at. Okay. My gut and my experience. But now, when I struggle to try and help the people in my world with this structure, I'm going to say transactional, neutral, emotive. I'm going to be like, okay, run through
Aw,
this. Where are we? Like, it's just like,
aw,
it's such a great
yeah,
vehicle. So I appreciate you for
yeah,
teaching me that.
yeah, yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So,
So,
salesconversation.com.
yes, thanks.
Salesconversation.com.
Yes.
Okay. We will put the link in the show notes. You run cohorts.
Hmm.
And so they're rolling and they're small groups, and you fill out the application and you can get signed up. And then you start on certain rounds and you go in with 6 or 7 or other so people, and you go through this 2-day training together.
Hmm.
And I am super excited to have you in our community, Erin. I
Yeah,
think you're going to be a big asset for us.
thank
Thank you
you.
so much for being here
Yeah,
today. I appreciate you.
yeah, I appreciate you. This has been, I can't believe this is the first time we've talked.
I know.
Like that
And
feels,
5 minutes before air,
yeah,
like it just bang.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes you meet people and you're like, how have we just met? Because I know you, we
Right,
know each
right.
other. Yeah, love it. Thank you so
It's
much.
so
So good.
true. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
I love when we have another tool for our tool belt, right? And I bet many of you listening said, I get that. I do that. I understand it. But for me, I love having the clarity around it, having a name for it, because then it's something that I think I'm always picturing my mind shifting gears. And so it's like, oh, okay, I'm in this gear. Oh, move to this gear. So I instinctively do it, and I'm sure you do it too. But when you really understand what you're doing, then you can actively do it, especially when, for example, my brain goes to, if I'm in a selling situation and I'm feeling like, hey, this isn't going my way, what's going on? Now my brain goes to, oh, well, where am I at? Am I in transactional? Am I in emotion? Like, where am I at? Am I in neutral? And then I can sort of identify, oh, that's because you need to be here, and then make that change, right? It's like a good SOP. You get through your day, you go through all the processes because it's what you do and you've done it 1,000 times. But it's another thing to sit down and document the process and be able to hand it off to someone else and say, this is how we do it exactly. It's that clarity, right? So I'm talking about having the clarity in the moment of the sales process. Because when we document things and we understand the things and we add them to our tool belt, then we can see when they're working and when they're not working. But then we have some understanding to how to evaluate why it's not working, right? I love it. I just love the whole thing. All right, so let's pick it apart. First of all, Erin says that sales are an expansion of who we are. They don't change us, they don't take away from us, but in fact, they add. Right? You're adding to your identity. You're building on who you are. And knowing who you are helps you sell better so that you do it like not like a swarmy car salesman. Let's be serious, right? My daughter Christy would always say on her podcast, but how? So Erin says we learn this through intuition, but also through failure, practice, and experience. Okay? And the key, what I really discovered in our conversation, is that learning and understanding how to pivot, how to switch gears, right? I love that. I said in the beginning of the show that it's kind of like design. There is a balance, and it's also like dancing. You know, I love dancing. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, sometimes you just kind of like sashay in the background, enjoying the whole experience, right? So no matter what dance mode you're in, you have to know when to move in and out of them. Otherwise, it's not as fun, right? So in sales, Erin is explaining there are the modes too: transactional, relational, and neutral selling modes. First, we have to understand what each is, why it's used, how it's used, and when it's used. But that's not enough for them to be successful. And for us to be successful, you have to understand how to move between them in the conversation in real time, right? It's like the dance steps. You can't just like learn a dance step and then stop, look around and go, wait, I'll do the second dance step. But like the music's moving, like it's happening. You got to keep going, right? So it's the same with this. You've got to learn to do it in the moment, all right? Let's talk about how Erin defines these. Transactional selling is logic and information and data. Very clear. I love that because there's a role for that in every conversation when we're selling somebody something. Transferring the logic, the information, and the data of what you do, how you do it, your products and services, what it is, what it's going to do for them. Then there is emotive or relational selling, which is feelings and passion, right? This is where you are helping people to understand what the end result is going to be like. Oh my God, this is going to be so great. Like imagine it, vision it, blah, 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 right? Like that's the juice. That's what we're going for, right? But then there's also neutral selling, which is function. Okay. And that's just you're in that mode and we're just going through the things that need to be understood about whatever it is we're selling. All right. If you think about these in sales terms, there's nothing icky about transactional selling. It's the information. It's hello. It's your client needs this information, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with neutral selling either. It might not be as fun, but it's a necessary part of the process. And as a creative, maybe these are areas where you're struggling the most, but that's probably because you might be stuck inside the bottle. Like Erin said, you can't see the label from inside the bottle. How do you get out? Well, you listen to podcasts, you join a community, you take classes, you hire a coach, you attend a conference, right? And if you're listening, you're already a step ahead. You're in this community, all right? And what's happening is in this community, I gather the people who can help you, just like Erin, just like all of the instructors at Lu University, all right? So make sure you just don't passively take in the information, that you transfer it to steps to actually gaining the skills, right? You need to build stamina. You aren't going to change anything in a minute, but the small steps, they're the ones that move you to your goal. And I love that Erin pointed out that building these muscles doesn't mean just taking steps in care of your business, but you need to take steps in care of yourself too, right? Clean up your books, get it organized, check. Go to bed at a decent hour. Check. Both of these matter, right, when we show up in our business. We touched on this a lot at LuAnn Live in November 2023, where the theme was health and wealth. I keep mentioning Katie McDonald. She was one of our speakers. One of the feedback forms said to me specifically, Katie McDonald from the stage during her presentation spoke to me and said things that I didn't know I needed to hear. How's that for an aha, right? I love that. And Katie talked about how we show up and take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our business, right? She was on the podcast episode 881 if you want to learn more about Katie. Next, the thing we need to do is we need to build that skill. This is where the courses and the coaching comes in. You have to have practice, and perfect practice makes perfect play, right? Well, how are you going to build this skill? Well, this is a great time of year to consider that question if you're listening in real time. 2024 is just around the corner. Lu University is also around the corner, and we have 5 amazing 5-week courses and 3-hour intensives that cover a lot of ground in the skill building department. Registration is open and we'll have it linked in the show notes, okay? I'm also teaching a course for the first time this year. I am taking my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, and making it a workshop. This is foundational business. This is covering all the bases in your business. This is almost like I wanted to do with the class at this time of year because it's like a review, and it's a lot like a strategy session that I do in my chairman of boards on our kickoff day. It's reviewing all the areas of business and saying, hey, maybe you want to go from 100,000 in sales to 500,000 in sales, or you want to go from 2 million to 4 million. But I first need to know that we've got all the groundwork covered. Because if we just build your marketing out, then you're going to crash and burn. And so that's what this course is. It's sort of like, let's get in deep. Let's figure out if we've got all, you know what it is? As a designer, you would never just go start building the second floor of a home until you knew that the first floor was solid. That's what this is. And if you feel like you've been running a business for more than a minute and you've never hit that stride, then maybe you're missing one of these foundational areas of your business. So I encourage you, just go to Lu University, LuAnnUniversity.com, take a look at all the different courses, see what's right for you. All right. Now, Erin also has a great resource. She offers a 2-day intensive. It's called Vision and Voice Workshop. And on the first day, she focuses on you, your superpowers, and your authentic sales voice. Then on the second day, she focuses on the client, on communication and sales strategy. This is the practice that's so important. And this is the safe place to practice and rehearse these conversations so they become, quote, pass the salt, end quote, like Terry Taylor says. If you are not familiar with pass the salt, you got to go back and listen to episode 913. Terry has been a guest several times, and she always delivers valuable insight. But pass the salt, wow, that's everything. I love that line the second she hit me with it. And what it means is you need to be able to talk about price and money neutrally. And this is exactly what Erin is saying and what she says when we need to pivot through the different selling modes during the conversation. All right. So we're going to link Terry's episodes in the show notes. She is also the leader of the Interior Design Business Academy if you are looking for more resources on how to uplevel your business in 2024. Another great episode is episode 760 with Jessica Harling, who teaches the 7-step sales process. And you know that, this is my sales process. This is what I've done for years. It is our signature sales process from Exciting Windows, and Jessica Harling has adapted it for interior designers as well as window treatment people. All righty. Erin, amazing. Amazing. I just love this conversation. I'm sure we are going to be working again together in the future because I just resonated so much with the actual strategies and the things that you taught us, but also you as a person and the way that you show up in support of all of us and helping us be better in our businesses. So I am so grateful that you were here, and I appreciate you for joining us. And I thank you for joining us as well. If you are listening in real time, you are getting ready, hopefully to take a week off. If you're listening in real time, December 22nd, you've probably closed your studio. You're looking forward to being with friends and family and relaxing until January. And I hope you do exactly that. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of LuAnn and Erin, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or LuAnn University, go to LuAnnandErin.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to WindowWorksNJ.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.